Godzilla fans are in for a treat, as IDW Publishing has rebooted its Godzilla comic book universe with 3 new titles under a new shared universe dubbed the Kai-Sei Era. And one of the 3 titles has us intrigued and excited due to the presence of a mysterious half-man, half-kaiju. So we decided to make a video on the most intriguing and ambitious ongoing comic book titled Godzilla Escape the Deadzone. So, jump aboard as we explore the Deadzone and come face to face with a mysterious half-kaiju, half-man in the new IDW Godzilla Universe. But before we enter the Deadzone, we have a small request. Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications to get notified every time we upload a new marvelous video, just like this one. It is one small click for you, but for us, it's as big as Godzilla. What is the Kai-Sei Era? First things first, before we explore the Deadzone and tell you more about the mysterious wanderer, let's get to know a little bit about the Kai-Sei Era. The Kai-Sei Era is what IDW is calling its latest connected universe of the 3 ongoing Godzilla comic books that are releasing this year, namely Godzilla, Godzilla Escape the Deadzone, and Starship Godzilla. It is the second shared universe of the publisher's ongoing comic series and follows the IDW Universe that came out in 2011-2015. The series is named after the Kai-Sei, a mysterious fictional energy source that awakened and empowered Godzilla and other kaijus sometime in the past. The Kai-Sei Era is set in an alternate year 2025 AD, that is to say, the present, which is roughly 70 years after the events of the first Godzilla movie, which was released in 1954. The series is set in a post-apocalyptic world ravaged by Godzilla and drastically altered by the inexplicable energy of the Kai-Sei. The latest IDW Godzilla Universe features everything from a team of superheroes known as G-Force, who are trying to defeat the monsters in present-day America, to outer space adventures aboard the SS Mechagodzilla in Starship Godzilla, and perhaps the most unique and intriguing of them all, the tale of a half-human, half-kaiju mutant who wanders an irradiated wasteland known as the Deadzone. Welcome to the Deadzone. Speaking of the Deadzone, we get our first glimpse of the wasteland that is the Deadzone in issue number 1 of Godzilla Escape the Deadzone. The issue was released in August 6, 2025, and is released by Eisner-nominated writer duo Ethan S. Parker and Griffin Sheridan, whose previous comic book, Kill Your Darlings, was a gripping, tragic fairy tale of an 8-year-old girl whose imaginary world is invaded by an ancient evil. And bringing the cataclysmic dystopia of the Deadzone to life is Pablo Tunica, whose other notable comic book illustrations include IDW's very own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, and other Godzilla titles in the IDW Godzilla universe, such as Godzilla Heist, Godzilla Rage Across Time, and Godzilla Unnatural Disasters. So, we already have a good idea of how the Deadzone is going to look like, but we're not here to get into the technicalities of the artwork, are we? We're here to know what kind of place the Deadzone is and where it is. So the Deadzone is described as a place in the Pacific Northwest that was nearly wiped off the face of the earth. It is one of the places that were transformed beyond recognition after the rampaging devastation brought by Godzilla and other kaijus from the events of the movie several years ago. And we're talking of a scale of devastation that was never seen before in human history. Alright, let's cut the hyperbole and get straight to the point. The Deadzone is what remains of Seattle, Washington, sequestered after years of devastation and exposure to radiation. It has been classified by the US government as uninhabitable and walled off from the rest of the world. There's junk and rubble all over the place, and the city's impressive skyline is nowhere to be seen. All that we see is rubble and chaos everywhere, and an image of a post-apocalyptic dystopia where there's no order whatsoever. The government wants its citizens to believe that nothing is still alive inside the Deadzone, and hence the name of the place. But will you believe the government? Contrary to what the government wants us to believe, there is life inside the Deadzone, and there is a mystery far larger than any other that you and I could never have imagined even in our wildest dreams. There are stories of a man, or rather, a half-man, half-kaiju, who wanders freely throughout the wasteland. Some say he can even kill kaiju, while others say he's not the only one of his kind. This has us beg the question, who is this mysterious wanderer? Is he some kind of unnatural beast molded by decades of radiation? Or is he some sort of experiment gone wrong? The first issue of Escape the Deadzone has far more questions than answers, but it's an interesting concept, and that's what makes Escape the Deadzone my favorite comic book title in IDW's ongoing Godzilla comics. The answer to our questions will likely come out in the later issues, but that's the fascinating part about the first issue, which gives us a glimpse of the mysterious Wanderer, making us more tempted to look forward to the upcoming issues. The Mysterious Wanderer of the Deadzone. Alright, so this is the most interesting part of the video, where we explore the first issue of Godzilla Escape the Deadzone and tell you the plot and the underlying mystery of one of the most intriguing comic book titles in some time. Here goes. The first issue begins with a narrative that is likely set sometime in the past, before Seattle became the Deadzone, and its citizens lived like everyone else, when they had things to do and people to see. We see the Seattle skyline and a smiling man sitting at a desk inside an office, who is fortunate to have a purpose in life, with a career and a family to go home to. He looks at a picture of a girl, while the prologue suggests that in the years to come, people who survived and kept their minds would come to realize the sheer opulence of their lives that they once took for granted. They would realize how it was a time of safety and excess, of full bellies and home security systems, a relative utopia until the monsters arrived, and the time to come would be a time of the monsters. Then the earth is shaken, things fall around, and we see the glaring eye of Godzilla from the man's window as they look petrified. We also see what looks like a nuclear explosion or radiation while the prologue continues, suggesting that some people called the kaijus demons, while some even thought they were gods. Nonetheless, what is certain is that when the kaijus arrived, they brought devastation and destruction like never before. And this is when we're shown the cataclysmic wasteland that remains of Seattle, aka the Deadzone. In the Deadzone, we see a cantina, which is Spanish for a bar, amid all the rubble, where two men are sitting. One of them is wearing a green jacket and a cap under an orange hoodie, while the other is a drunk with what looks like a robotic arm, who tells the bartender about his face-off with Godzilla. The presence of the men suggests that there were people still living in the wasteland. The drunk is telling the bartender that he was looking for a decent cigarette and was tearing apart an old 7-Eleven looking for a carton that the vultures hadn't picked clean, when out of nowhere, Godzilla showed up. While boasting about his little face-to-face with Godzilla himself, the drunk realizes that the bartender and the guy in the hoodie aren't buying his story, so he starts talking about even crazier stories of kaiju man-beasts walking around. The bartender says that he's heard those stories too, and that, given the circumstances, as the drunk, he's not ruling out the possibility of a half-man, half-kaiju wandering the wasteland. The drunk man starts making fun of the half-man, half-kaiju, which he thinks is dumber than his story of his face-to-face with Godzilla and hightailing with his sorry loot from the king of the monsters. Meanwhile, the bartender says that he's heard people telling the stories of the Monster Man 4 times this week. Then the drunk suggests that he heard of the half-kaiju for the first time when he was passing through the southern territories. He also suggests that people have been mutating ever since the G-Day, referring to the Godzilla Day when the kaijus landed. But he's not too sold on the idea of what people say about this Monster Man. He jokes that people literally say that the half-kaiju has a tail and that he whips people with it, and pokes fun at him as he reminds him of Barney the dinosaur from Barney and Friends. The mystery hoodie man starts whispering something, and the drunk asks him to keep it down, to which the former says that he's just listening to the two talking. The drunk then asks him if he's ever heard about the mysterious wanderer, and the hoodie man answers in the affirmative. When the bartender asks if he thinks the rumors are true, the hooded man gets up and says, not at all, as we see his tail, which he says is mostly for balance. So now we know the legend, or the stories of the half-man, half-kaiju are true, and the mysterious hooded man is the half-man, half-kaiju himself. But why is he so mysterious, and why does he wander the Deadzone? Kaiju bounty hunter or mutant messiah? Well, we don't know exactly why the half-man, half-kaiju is so mysterious and how he came into being, but some claim he is a mutant messiah, a sort of savior who has come to redeem those suffering in the wasteland. The wanderer is not among those who have fled in search of a semblance of safety and sanity in the world and the lives they've lost, but he simply carries on. One thing we are certain about is its purpose for carrying on in the irradiated, desolate heap of rubble called the Deadzone. You see, the Wanderer comes to the rescue of Deadzone denizens who are plagued by kaiju troubles. That has me speculate that the Wanderer is a kaiju bounty hunter, and the denizens could always count on him to kill the menacing kaijus for them, given of course that the price was right. In the next few pages of the comic, we see the Wanderer wander into a fenced-off Sector 2 with a warning reading "Kaiju ahead," and this is where we get to see him in action, with his claws out and the loud onomatopoeias "Cthulhu" and "Shracked" and "Scree" in big letters as he faces off a ginormous camel worm hybrid kaiju with a large gaping mouth and sharp teeth. The Wanderer successfully subjugates the kaiju and rides on it like a camel or horse, as the terrified drunk man in a bar says, "God in heaven and the beast that rises out of the abyss shall make war against them and shall overcome." The Wanderer's origins. Although we know what keeps the Wanderer going, we don't know exactly where they came from, because that is something that we're told even the Wanderer himself could not say. As he takes the captured kaiju out of town, we learn that the Wanderer is a man with no past and an unlikely future. But we're hinted that in another life, he loved and was loved in return. And maybe, I'm just hypothesizing here, but I could smell a hint of who the Wanderer could be, or perhaps something that's related to his past, when he stumbles upon an old car in the swamp and says, "You've got to be kidding me," as he finds the same picture of the girl that the man in the office was looking at before Godzilla arrived, and he proceeds to keep it in his pocket. I wonder why he did that. It's still too early to jump to any conclusions, so I'd suggest you take my theory with a pinch of salt. Meanwhile, just as the Wanderer hands over the kaiju to some weird cape-wearing alien goblin-looking men and wanders on the arid landscape in search of his next bounty, he is interrupted by a bunch of deformed, irradiated guys who come to him in a post-apocalyptic dune buggy type vehicle and alert him of a kaiju that's on their tail. They ask him to get into their vehicle, but the Wanderer tells them that they're in Zone 1 and nothing with horns or scales can come in this area, or at least nothing that couldn't handle itself, suggesting that there are no kaiju around. As the Wanderer continues walking, we're told that although we might find this kind of existence depressing, he preferred to keep things simple. It was only him and the monsters. Then, out of nowhere, we see not one, but two gargantuan kaijus fighting it out amid all sorts of onomatopoeias. The Wanderer is unsure what these monsters are, but one of them has tentacles on its back, which it uses to grab the other kaiju with and toss it on the ground. But before this happens, our kaiju whisperer leaps into the air and grabs onto the second kaiju and quickly releases that bet on the wrong horse as this one's going down. And just as the Wanderer is about to climb down the dead kaiju, its abdomen explodes, exposing what looks like a bloody, messed up network of tentacle-like structures and a young girl coiled inside them. This is the first time that we see the half-man, half-kaiju legend, as he takes off his hood and his caps and shows his human-looking face as he tries to take the kid out of the kaiju's body. The Wanderer jumps into the kaiju's popped-open belly and rescues the kid and tries to wake her up, all while we are reminded about his solace in his singular focus that is killing kaijus for a living, and how he escaped the madness of the Deadzone by becoming a force of nature. But now, after finding the girl, he will soon come to realize that he was meant for more, because there is no shortage of secrets in the Deadzone, and the past has a way of catching up. The issue ends with the Wanderer asking the kid if she was controlling the kaiju. Sneak peek. Godzilla escaped the Deadzone number 2. Was the child controlling the kaiju? And what is the Church of Godzilla? Thanks to the editor's letter at the end of the first issue of Godzilla Escape the Deadzone, we get a sneak peek into what to expect in the next issue. We learn that moments after stumbling upon the mysterious kid in the kaiju's belly, the Wanderer gets abducted by a strange cult called the Church of Godzilla. What does this bizarre cult want from our half-man, half-kaiju? And did the child actually control the kaiju? Well, these are questions that we'll have to reserve for the next issue. We might also come face to face with something more dangerous than any kaiju that stalks the Deadzone, more sinister than whoever is keeping them behind these walls, and more powerful than the Wanderer himself. Marvelous verdict. Time now for our marvelous verdict. Godzilla Escape the Deadzone is one of the most unique and promising looking comics in IDW's latest ongoing Kai-Sei series. The fact that it is part of a whole connected universe of comic books will eventually lead to something big and exciting, and it will be interesting to see how all three comics and their characters get connected with each other at some point. But for now, what we are most excited about is to know who the mysterious child is and whether or not he or she was controlling the kaiju. Or if you're just as curious as me to learn about the Church of Godzilla, then you gotta wait for us to get our hands on the next issue of Godzilla Escape the Deadzone and explore it for you in our next Marvelous video. Until that time comes, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more Marvelous videos and give us a thumbs up if you like this video.